Okay, guys, we are back and talking about Woolworths again because unfortunately this story is not going away anytime soon. It seems like every day there is some new revelation and some new level added on to this Woolworths, Coles, Australia Day memorabilia saga. So what do we know so far? We know that Woolworths and Big W came out saying that they're going to take their Australia Day merchandise off of their shelves because initially the excuse from some spokeswoman was that there was no demand for this merchandise anymore. They said that over the last few years, the demand for Australia Day flags, thongs, whatever, has been steadily decreasing, purportedly due to the fact that less Australians are celebrating Australia Day. But then they came out and ripped off the veil and told us the truth. They said that they were having talks in their back room with their diversity people, and they kind of came to the decision that people aren't celebrating Australia Day anymore, so it wouldn't be right for them to put merchandise on their shelves. Okay, so now the truth is out. They're virtue signaling, they're jumping on the bandwagon of the woke corporates. Insert Qantas and Bud Light and all these other corporates who are trying to push a woke agenda. So after that, Peter Dutton came out and slammed Woolworths. For the first time in his life, he showed some passion, showed some personality, and said everyone should boycott Woolworths. Quite a bold claim if you ask me, but hey, you do you, Peter Dutton. So then Anthony Albanese jumped on it and said, Peter Dutton, that's a ridiculous thing to say. You're going to cost 200,000 people their jobs, which is a completely insane statement because, well, we only have 2 major supermarkets in this country, and if people stop going to Woolworths, then they're going to go to Coles instead, and Coles will need more employees. So that 200,000 people who are let go from Woolworths because of lack of customers, because Peter Dutton told them not to shop there, ridiculous concept anyway, would have then gone and worked at Coles. So Anthony Albanese, ridiculous statement. But hey, what's new with this guy? Also, side note, so now Albo decides to care about the 200,000 supermarket employees. What about when all of the supermarkets took out all of their cashiers and replaced them with machines, self-service machines? That would have lost a bunch of jobs. Where was he at that point? Did he intervene? No. So really, the guy's got no case. Once again, he always jumps on the virtue signaling bandwagon. When there's some identity politics to be discussed or debated, he's right there because that's his wheelhouse. But when you actually have to discuss things of real financial substance, he's nowhere to be seen. You know what the excuse would have been when people jumped up and down about the self-service cashiers? He would have said, oh, it's not a government company. They can look after themselves. I'm not intervening. Oh, but I'm sorry, when it comes to Australia Day, you can intervene. Double standards, hypocrite, Anthony Albanese. Anyway, going off track. So after the Dutton Albanese blow up, I actually went into a Coles supermarket because I wanted to support them. I wanted to buy some Australia Day merchandise, but boy, was I greeted with a nasty surprise when I got in there. So I went into Coles. I was looking all over the supermarket. I filmed a TikTok about this. All over the supermarket, could not find the Australia Day merchandise. Asked someone, they pointed me to the back corner. Literally back corner. You couldn't get any further back in the supermarket. Okay, first red flag. And then I saw this tiny little stand. It was so small. I would say like this wide times like 6'6" tall. Tiny. And then I was like, wow, this is offensive. Decided not to support them because they just clearly don't give a shit. They're doing it just to kind of be in the middle of the road and save their customers. But then I walked around the corner more towards the front of the store, and what did I see? I saw a massive Lunar New Year display. Now this display was, I would say, 6 times the size of the Australia Day display. Not even kidding. Huge. At the very front of the aisle, which, as we all know, in retail, amazing real estate. That would cost a lot of money. Filled, absolutely filled to the brim with merchandise, food, everything was red. Don't get me wrong, I think it's lovely. I have said a million times, I think we should be celebrating all cultures, all religions, in supermarkets, in our cities, whatever. I think Australia, this is exactly what we're arguing. Australia is a melting pot of cultures, and on Australia Day, we want to come together and celebrate all of that under the one flag. I'm not against celebrating Chinese New Year, Diwali, Ramadan. My point is there's clearly demand for these culturally specific things, including Australia Day. There is no one in the world who can convince me that there's more demand for Lunar New Year stuff than for Australia Day stuff. No way. I'm sorry. No. And it's so obvious that the only reason that they're giving all of these other cultural things so much significance and so much real estate in supermarkets, which is so valuable, is because they're trying to seem woke and they're trying to seem inclusive and diverse. And that's a great thing. I'm not going to say that it's not. But what about the inclusivity for the country that we're in? It's like they're embarrassed of Australia, but they're so proud of every other race and ethnicity. To be in a country that the management of a store, of a supermarket, is so scared of being vilified and cancelled for celebrating that country is just wild to me. It just shows how much this vocal minority has influenced the discussion and the narrative about this. They are so scared of this small amount of people who yell and scream and throw tantrums online. Look at this statistic. There was a Roy Morgan poll in 2023 that found 64% of Australians actually want to keep Australia Day on the 26th of January. You would not think that. I was so surprised when I read that because I thought that I was in the minority. I thought that everyone else hated Australia Day, but it's not the case. It's the same as it was with The Voice. Everyone was like, no one supports The Voice. It's racist. You're a bigot if you support it. Same thing with Australia Day. And look at this, 64%. What was The Voice, 60-40 or something? Same sort of ratio. So we just have to keep remembering that it is the really vocal minority that are dictating the narrative on these things. But don't feel like you're in the minority because you're not. If you support Australia Day, if you say no to The Voice, if you want a united Australia who is proud about our country, then you are in the majority. And we need to get that message out more because people feel shame when they celebrate Australia and Australia Day. And that's not right at all. Because you know what's going to end up happening? This is going to compound and we're not going to be allowed to celebrate our country anymore. There's going to be no Australia Day. Australia Day ceremonies are being cancelled left, right and centre. Every year there are less and less. And that's because there's this fake narrative being pushed by a very small amount of people to try and gaslight us into thinking that no one wants this when actually the majority does. So it's only up to us to speak out about it so we can flip the script. So there was also this really interesting tweet from Craig Kelly. He grabbed a screenshot of the last 5 days of the Woolworths share price and it went down considerably. It went down by $2 billion or 4.47%. So he was then saying that Woolworths going woke has really affected the share price and people were kind of boycotting or cancelling Woolworths because of it. This was really bad form by Craig Kelly. It wasn't accurate at all. The supermarkets, both Coles and Woolworths share prices have been going down over the last 6 months. This wasn't an isolated incident. And in fact, Coles share price on that very week crashed 5%, which is actually more than Woolworths did. So you cannot find a correlation between the Australia Day memorabilia and the share prices of the supermarkets at all. But it still raises the issue that supermarket share prices are crashing, and there's a reason for that. The obvious reason is because of inflation. The renewal of the leases are going up. That's what normally happens in inflation. The supermarkets have to pay more rent to their landlords, therefore they have to increase the prices of the goods in their stores. People are put off by that and they go elsewhere to find cheaper alternatives like Aldi, IGA, whatever. They're also saying a big contributor to those share price falls is massive stock losses. Now, this one I have zero sympathy because they can avoid that. They've put in these self-checkouts, as I said. It's so easy to steal things from there. I'm not surprised at all that they have a massive issue with theft. They've tried to cut corners, they've tried to save money, and this is the result. You can't have it both ways. And another reason, which I personally think is a reason for their decrease in their stock price, is that people are just sick of the big supermarkets. They are clearly ripping us off. everyone knows that the farmers are selling to the supermarkets at a much lower price. They've come out and said the raw price for them has actually gotten less since COVID. So it's the supermarkets that aren't passing this on to the customers. And people are really resentful of that because they see these billion-dollar profits and they think, well, you do have room to move. And I guess this is why there's an investigation now. But I really do think that people are shopping with their wallet and they're just over being taken for a ride. There are now alternatives. Aldi, Costco, IGA, a lot of the independents are even cheaper than the big supermarkets. We used to have this mentality that Coles and Woolies were always the cheapest. No, I've even seen people, like the power of social media. I've even seen on TikTok people shopping at places like the Reject Shop for things like detergent or cleaning products, and they're significantly cheaper. So I think shoppers have just become a lot more savvy than they used to be because there's just so much more access to information, which is such a good thing because it puts the power back in our hands. All of that combined has contributed to a decrease in their stock price over the last 6 months. So it has been consistent. I think this is a really good wake-up call for the supermarkets, and let's hope they genuinely change. And then the latest thing in this whole saga was Woolworths then came out and said that they were going to fly the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flag outside of their supermarkets. Now, people asked questions about that because they didn't mention the Australian flag. Once again, it seemed like a very virtue signaling thing to do off the back of this Australia Day boycott. So it was all very strange, a lot to handle in 1 week. God, I feel sorry for their PR department this week. They've had an absolute doozy. And then they must have realized that it's all too much. So they came out and they backtracked and they said, no, actually the flags will only be flown at the head office, which is like 2 locations in the country. And I imagine there would already be flags there. It was all very strange, very weird. And if you're a cynical person like I am, maybe you could think that the supermarkets are doing this to drum up a bit of publicity, move everyone's attention away from the upcoming inquiry from the government into the supermarkets, because that is a lot worse than an Australia Day story. So who knows, maybe we've all been played. Wouldn't surprise me with these big corporate PR departments, but I think it is really important to keep the pressure on these supermarkets and let's see how this inquiry turns out. Let's see if there's any tangible things that come out from it that will help with cost of living, because I know that everyone's struggling. Everyone who talks to me is struggling. Everyone's sick of the cost of just feeding their family. So let's hope something good comes of it. But it is the Albanese government, so I have my doubts.